All right. Got it. Got a little notice there. Okay, welcome everybody. Nice to have you for our December meeting. And our first item is approval of minutes, or item number 2, I should say, on which we have 4 sets of minutes, including some added for the refunding of the swap financing that we've done over here the last couple of months. So does anybody have any questions or corrections or commentary on the minutes? And if not, can we have a motion to approve the minutes of October 3rd, October 11th, November 14th, and November 23rd and December 1st?
Wayne, this is Tom Peterson. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Tom. And I know Tom was there for almost, if not all of those meetings, so he would be a good one to do that. Do we have a second?
Second, Matt Dahl.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Krista, do you want a voice vote or do you want a roll call?
You can do a voice vote on this.
Okay, let's do a voice vote then. All in favor of approval of the minutes as noted, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? If not, the minutes are approved unanimously. Let's go on to item number 3, and I'm going to turn the time over to Jason to talk about our procurement policy changes.
Thanks, Wayne. Let me hurry and share my screen here. This is a continuation of the discussion we had last week, talking about the procurement policy. One of the things as we were going through the proposed procurement policy that there were concerns about last week was we had proposed to change the limit to need competitive quotes from 5,000 to 20,000 for all items. There was a concern brought up that that was too much. And so what we did is we've come back and we've made a change to that. What you have up here on your screen is showing what our current policy is, which I'm calling the 2002 policy because that's when it was approved. Under this policy, anything up to $5,000 did not require a procurement process of getting quotes or anything like that. We're proposing a change for capital project related items of up to $20,000 do not require competitive quotes. Anything that's not capital project related, it would be up to $5,000, which is no change from where we are now. Kind of the 20,000 we came with was what one of the other member cities said that their policy was, and we thought it was reasonable to bring before the board. Another change from the 2002 policy is that anything from $20,000 to $50,000 or $5,000 to $50,000, if it's not a capital project, would require 2 competitive quotes. Before the 2000, in our 2002 policy, anything up to $50,000 required 3 quotes. Now anything from $50,000 to the state bid limit would require 3 quotes. And anything over the state bid limit would require a competitive formal process for procurement. That's what's being proposed in the procurement policy. I do want to bring up that the proposed policy does, let me get the right one up here. There we go. It does have some qualified exceptions shown here that allow you to not go through the procurement process. This is pretty standard. I think if you look at most of the city procurement processes, there are some instances where there are exceptions to the procurement process. I want to bring up there are 2 of these items here that did have questions in the UIA board meeting, and that was joinder and very specialized or confidential services. We need to look into state law regarding these 2 items, and the motion was made in UIA to approve the procurement process. subject to these two items being looked into, and if there were problems with these two items, to have them removed, if there were problems with state law.
Hey,
That
Jason,
was brought up.
hey, Jason, if I could, this is Jeff Starkey. So I dropped the ball on this from Jason. He had asked me to look into this and I just dropped the ball on it, checking on it. So what we at least propose is because this could be helpful to us in certain circumstances, but we don't think we actually have ever used it, the joinder provision or the very specialized or confidential. I don't think very specialized or confidential services is really a thing. So I suspect that'll come out anyway, because it won't be supported by state law. And the joinder provision, if we can do it, it might be helpful, because my guess is we sometimes have some generic bids that go out for maybe large amounts of inventory, and it might make sense, or basic projects that we just want to roll over. If we did use that joinder provision, if it's allowed by state law and we use it, we would add to any of our projects that we're requesting bids on. We would include language that informs those bidders that if they'd like to be considered for future similar projects within the next 6 months, check a box or something. However, if it doesn't look like state law, if they have any questions about it from the state's perspective, we'll probably just take it out.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Are there any questions from the board on what I presented here on the procurement policy? If Wayne, you're off.
Sorry, thank you, Jason. There are no other questions from the board?
Well, I think that,
Go ahead, Matt.
well, I was going to say is I think that explanation in this table was very helpful in sort of looking at some of those issues that we had from last time. So I appreciate that. And then I think I understand, and I think it makes sense what came out of UIA. So I don't have any additional questions, but I appreciate the reformatting of how you conveyed the information to us. It was helpful.
Very good. Matt, were you present in the UIA meeting?
I was not.
Oh, okay. I was going to draft you to maybe make the motion in the same manner, but I'm sure staff can supply us with that. The one question I did have, which you guys probably told us last month, I just don't remember, is what prompted the changes in our procurement policy anyway? Was this just looking at the policy and it had been a while, or what was going on?
Yeah, part of it is I'm new, and one of the first things I started looking at was cash disbursements and what our policies around cash disbursements were.
Okay.
I did think that some of the things we're doing here, for especially the bid limits, when we have to go out to bid, I thought we were going out to bid sometimes when it probably wasn't necessary to go out to bid. We were creating work for ourselves. So I just wanted to clean it up and get it consistent with what the state says, what their bid limits were, because we do a lot of fairly big projects of our own, and I wanted to get it there. Other than that, I like to look at a couple of policies a year, just as a general thing for me to do, to go through and clean up and make sure I understand everything. So you can probably expect me to look at a couple of policies a year and just want to, and at least talk them through internal or external if we need to on those.
Okay, very good.
So Wayne, I was in the UAA meeting and I did make the motion. So if there are no other questions, I would make a motion that we approve resolution UT 22-08, a resolution approving a procurement policy for Utopia with the condition that Jason and Jeff verify the joinder clause and the very specialized or confidential services clause with the state. And if they find that these need to be removed, that they would be removed.
That's perfect. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Matt Dahl.
Okay, Matt, we got a second. And do we have any further discussion on the motion? If not, Krista, I'll turn the time over to you.
Krista, we can't hear you.
Sorry,
Oh,
that's my fault.
Matt Dahl,
Yes.
Mark Christensen,
Yes.
Tom Peterson,
Yes.
Doug Hill,
Yes.
Zach Bloxham,
Yes.
Jason Sant,
Yes.
Todd Christensen,
Yes.
and Wayne Pyle.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. All right, let's move on to item number 4, 2023 board meeting schedule, which it looks like I am on the hook for explanation. I did take a look at this. Anybody have any questions on the schedule for the upcoming year? It's pretty standard, about every other month, starting in February.
This is Matt. I don't necessarily have a problem with the schedule of when the meetings are, and maybe this isn't exactly the right time to bring it up, but I was wondering if there was any chance that we could get the packet just even a day earlier for these meetings. Just sometimes I don't see them until late, and when we have bigger ones, getting through them before a morning meeting on a Monday is a little bit of a challenge. So I was just wondering if that's possible.
I think that's great. Reminder. Thank you for that, Matt. And yeah, Roger, Krista, if you guys could work on that, help us out. That'd be great.
Yeah, Krista's always ready. It's waiting for everybody here to get the stuff to her. So we'll light a fire under staff to get that to her earlier, so we get packets out earlier.
Okay, sounds good. I agree with the sentiment. Thanks for bringing that up, Matt.
Yeah, and I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, we don't need an approval of this item, so let's move on to number 5, which is Open and Public Meetings Act training.
Wayne, we do need a vote on accepting this,
Schedule.
the
Okay.
schedule.
All right, well then, go ahead, Krista.
Can I get we need a motion.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Well,
This is Zach.
Go ahead, Zach.
Sorry, Doug. I'll move that we approve the annual meeting schedule as explained.
And I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Zach. Thank you, Doug. Krista, you want to roll call on this one?
Yeah. Matt Dahl,
Yes.
Mark Christensen,
Yes.
Tom Peterson,
Yes.
Doug Hill,
Yes.
Zach Bloxham,
Yes.
Jason Sant,
Yes.
Todd Christensen,
Yes.
and Wayne Pyle.
Yes, thank you. All right, with that vote also being unanimous, let's move on to item number 5, Open and Public Meetings Act training. Jeff.
Got it. Roger, is that requesting share screen from you?
Yeah, I can share it for you. Are
I mean,
you
my
trying to
screen.
share it yourself?
Yeah, I'm trying to share.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Just on click share screen.
Yep. And click the window you were trying to share.
Yeah, okay. Well, I didn't do it, folks. So, okay. Having said that, so Roger, if you want to just put up yours, that's great. The one that you had before. I'm just going to blast through it. If you can put 2 pages at a time, that'd be wonderful. So members, I apologize for the fact that you're having training again, because each of you will have at least one more open meeting laws training this year under state law. So to the extent that this is just another of the 20 you've had in the last couple of years, I apologize. So I'm going to go quickly through it. If you can ask any questions you have. That'll be great. Otherwise, I'm going to just blast through this. I've sent an outline, which is a pretty decent outline of kind of summarizing all the open laws, open meetings law, state laws. And so you can use that to your extent anytime you want to, rather than pulling around to Utah, hauling around to Utah code. Okay, so first off, go here. We don't, as a general rule, have a lot of folks that show up at our public meetings. That's where most of the questions about whether or not we're appropriately utilizing the open meetings laws. And I've yet to see any questions even come up in the last 4 months. When they do, they're usually the same type of concerns. So let's just walk through what you all do generally. So all of our meetings are obviously public meetings, unless for those that are public hearings, in which case we have different noticing requirements to the public, but otherwise it's still a matter of it needs to be placed on an agenda prior to the meeting, if any action is going to be intended to be taken on it. We've gone through it a lot in the last month just because of the bonds we've gone through, because those require public hearings, allowing the public to give input. Whether the public gives inputs on your public meetings can be set by your own policies internally. Generally, that's going to be the chair will determine who wants to speak if you have a visitor showing up or someone shows up online and wants to talk, but has failed to provide any type of a notice to Krista that they want to participate. That would be up to the chair and the commission, the board, whether or not they want any comments made on particular items. In terms of, let's go to closed meetings. Some of the issues that come up are just closed meetings or unintentionally running into each other, or things that might be considered public meetings that we failed to comply with. Because we're an interlocal agency, the chances of having a majority of the weighted vote members running into each other at Pizza Hut are probably fairly slim. If it did happen, however, the only process that you have to follow is the fact that you can't make a decision about a particular item. There's not much more to it than that. And even if you did, the only remedy is to have that set aside if someone challenged that. That tends to be the remedy on everything. It's just setting aside the claim. And if it's for an action was taken, it's to set aside the action, you have to go through it again, or to require it go to whatever hearing it needed to go to. So closed meetings are their own type of meeting, have their own set of body of law, and have a long set of court cases that have followed them. Basically, the only reasons to have a closed meeting are discussion of character, professional competence, etc., collective bargaining issues, which we don't have unions involved, and reasonably imminent litigation. So if we're pretty sure someone's going to sue us, they've given us a notice of claim. So for us, it tends to be fairly easy because we get a notice of a claim filed prior to litigation starting. And then strategy sessions just regarding real property. And that's really about it. The thing that one wants to watch out is in the closed meetings, just stick to the topic. So it takes a 2/3 vote by the members, in our case, what is a weighted vote of the members to go into a closed session from out of a public meeting. Once you're in there and you've designated what it's going to be for, say you're talking about buying property, if it gets in there, those need to be recorded just like they would for a regular meeting. It's just that those minutes won't be disclosed unless we violate the closed meeting provisions. That basically means just stay on topic. I've yet to see a city council when you got into a closed session where somebody didn't want to wander into new areas that weren't provided for under the motion for what they let go to the closed session. So, and when I attend those with you, if we ever have them, I'll be pretty vigilant in making sure we stay that way, because I've represented cities that were challenged on that before, and therefore the recordings of our meetings had to go to the local district court, and the district court judge had to review. In this case, it was a audio cassette of it. And luckily, in the hour and a half worth of recordings, we didn't wander off topic anywhere. So that prevented us from having to disclose those pursuant to a grandma request. And that's nice to do. And it's embarrassing if you don't, is frankly all it is. Again, the purpose of the Open Meetings Act is just to maintain that persona and that representation to the public, that we're not making these decisions behind closed doors, that we're letting them understand and see what we're doing in open when we make a decision on anything. And so everything within the act really tries to address that, making sure we fully disclose, is transparent, and that they can trust their elected or appointed officials. Let me just tell you from my perspective, I've appreciated how Utopia and UIA have handled their own board meetings, because you guys stay so well on point with your agendas. You don't wander off. There's very seldom over talking and combat between fellow members, which again does and will occur at some point. But I've appreciated, because it sure makes for an easy listening and very transparent method to the public when they see that. So other than that, I don't think there's really anything else to go over. If anyone has questions, that'd be great. I'll be happy to answer them, but I'm pretty sure you're probably you've been over trained on this already.
Questions from the board? Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, very good. Let's move on to item 6 then. Discussion regarding accounts payable policy and internal controls for cash disbursements. Jason.
Thank you, Wayne. This is in response to a request by one of the UIA board members. They asked that I give a little bit update. As we were going through the procurement process, they asked what our accounts payable process was and what we did there. And I've kind of prepared a similar matrix for accounts payable that I showed you for procurement. Everything that has to be done for procurement has to happen before this process comes into place here. And it's in addition to what you see here. This is the process we use for authorizing payment to leave Utopia when we pay our bills and pay vendors, or pay cash to anybody. Right now, our process is up to anything up to $20,000 requires an approval from the department executive who's over the budget that the funds are coming out of, and the CFO or their designee. Anything from $20,000 to $50,000 requires a department executive and the CFO to approve it. Anything over $50,000 requires the department executive, the CEO, CFO, and the executive director. In addition to this, I didn't put this on here, but Roger also requires a report at the end of every month that shows every cash disbursement of over $10,000 that happened during the month, and he reviews that report and asks any questions to people over what has been spent. There are a few exceptions to this in the AP process. These exceptions are a little more straightforward than what you're going to see in procurement. The first is we have some recurring contractual payments that are contracts that have been approved by maybe the board or by the executive director, either way, just whoever's been approved to enter into the contracts. We do make those payments based off a properly approved contract, and that is approved by the CFO or their designee and the department executive. So payroll also goes through a separate payroll process that's been documented and defined. We have a travel and training policy that's different, but we have a separate policy and process in place for travel and training. Monthly utility payments, they are approved by the CFO or their designee. Bond issuance of cost are approved by the CFO, but they're only approved after we have an executed bond contract when we issue a new bond. So that would be for our bond advisors, the underwriters, and people like that. Any questions on our AP process and kind of how it works for approvals?
Okay, if there are no questions, let's move on to
I
item
do
7.
have one other thing, Wayne, sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry, this will be quick too, though. I was asked to give an update on our internal controls over cash disbursements. And don't want to go into too much detail with this for obvious reasons. But something we do have here is we do have separation of duties here. There are 3 things that you want to separate, and that is access to cash, access to recording in the recording system of what happens with cash, and authorization for cash to leave. If you can't have segregation of duties, you can have a mitigating control. We do have a couple mitigating controls here for some things where 2 sets of eyes are required to look at a transaction before cash can leave. And that's pretty common when you have smaller staffs that you can't segregate every single duty. I'm sure multiple cities that are on the board, they have mitigating controls to take care of where they might have issues with segregation of duties. We, for the most part, can segregate most of the things that we do, though, so that's good. Additionally, there was a high-profile issue with a city in Utah where they lost some money because they changed a vendor payment and sent it to the wrong place. Because of that, I have changed. This is our administrative policy for AP. I've added a vendor payment setup section here, and it says all vendor payment instructions shall be verified directly with the vendor company. Mailed or emailed payment instructions shall be verified with a known customer representative or by independent research of the company. And that's something I've actually had to enforce since I've been here. There have been instances where we receive an email or a mailed statement from a company saying, please change our payment information to a different location. I will make our staff go and contact a contact they know at the company and have trusted before, or research the company and independently verify the company information and call somebody at the company through it, not through a number that's on the communication we receive via email or website, or email or mailed copy, and find somebody there to make sure that it was a legitimate request before we allow it to happen. And that's all I have on internal control and just kind of our AP process. So any questions?
Okay, thank you, Jason. If there are no further questions from the board, let's move on to the financial update, item 7.
Oh, I will share my screen again then. I forgot it was me. Okay. Here is our financial update for Utopia as of November 30th. If you'll remember, what I show here is we show in the first 2 columns the 5-month period ending November 30th, 2022 versus 2021 in the first 3 columns here, and then the difference. Then the second one's just where we project to end the year and what we budgeted to the end of the year and the difference if we're projecting to be over or under budget. We have revenues up top, expenses down below. That's kind of what we're looking at here. So revenues at Utopia, as you can see, are increasing here. And that's a really good thing. But if you look here, we are projecting to be under budget at year end for some of our transport and some of our numbers inside of Utopia. There are a few reasons for this. The main reason for this is a lot of our numbers are driven by growth that happens monthly. And right now, where we're adding 500 plus customers a month, we see our revenue numbers skewed toward the end of the year. And we have bigger numbers at the end of the year and smaller numbers at the beginning of the year. Because of this, a lot of the times you'll see some of our revenue numbers projected small here, because all I do for this projection is I take my period ended for 11/30 and I projected out for if we had that same kind of growth for the next 7 months, those same numbers for the next 7 months, what would it look like? We won't have the same numbers for the next 7 months, especially when you look at these network operations for UIA. Right now, I'm showing we'll be about $368,000 low by projection, but really, we're probably on schedule to be on budget there. We'll see that the growth that they've had will catch up in the second half of the year. You'll also notice that we're a little bit low here on residential transport for Utopia. A little more concerned about that number, but I do think we're going to be close on that number also with what we have going on in Idaho Falls and Bozeman, Montana. We don't have much money coming in yet for Bozeman, Montana, and we did project some growth there, and we just barely have started signing up customers there. So that growth will come the second half of the year. I think we're in pretty good shape on revenues. Miscellaneous operating revenue here, projecting to be $2.6 million over budget. That's not a number to rely on. What this is in the partnership we're doing with Bozeman, there is some materials that they cannot find that Utopia has on hand or UIA has on hand. What happens is Utopia buys those items and then at the exact same cost sells them to Bozeman because we have better relationships. We have the materials coming in. So because of that, you'll see we have a revenue number that's projected to be $2.7 million over and a professional services expense number that's projected to be $2.9 million over. They're just offsetting each other. That's what we're looking at there with both of those numbers. That's just an offset of materials we're selling to primarily Bozeman, but there is some going to Idaho Falls also. Other than that, with expenses, payroll's projected to be under. That's because we haven't hired as quickly as for some new positions that were in the budget. There's still some positions that are open. Other expenses are a little bit over. They're actually not over budget, but they are projected to be over budget. I think we're going to be okay there. We had a whole bunch of what are those IP addresses? I think they were IP addresses. A bunch of IP addresses come open, and we had an opportunity to buy them, and so that we did, and that was a fairly large purchase. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Roger?
Yeah, it's a good thing to spend money on. If we're using our IP space, it means we're selling IP services to users. Now, you say, well, isn't that the role of an ISP? Well, we do offer ISP services on a wholesale basis to some of our providers, and the providers who do use our ISP service have been growing pretty well. So not only do we make money on the IP space, but obviously the routing and everything associated with the bandwidth side of it. So just so you know, it's kind of like we use an analogy of like the pipe and the water in the pipe. So most of our providers provide their own water, and we just provide the pipes. But it is an option to some of them to get wholesale water from us. And in order to do that, we got to have IP space. So as we run out of that and need to go buy more, it means we've actually been very successful with that offering. We do make a lot of money from that offering. But every once in a while, we have to drop some money to invest and expand the capacity of that, both from a transit connection, which is kind of our upstream connectivity there, as well as the IP address space that we use that goes basically is needed for each customer on the system.
Thanks, Roger. And we're not over budget on that line yet, so we still have some things we can do to control that, but we do have a little bit front loaded. Everything else, we're looking good. We're under budget on expenses. Any questions on the financial numbers there?
Questions from the board?
I do have some graphs to show after, Wayne, just to warn you.
Okay. I did have one question on the payroll, which you kind of alluded to, Jason. So I know we have unfunded positions. Part of that's at least generally related to same sorts of challenges we're all facing out there for whatever the positions are. Do you think that's going to significantly change, or is it just too hard to tell?
I think we have two things, and Roger, I'll answer and then let you answer. I think part of it is we do have some difficulty filling some positions. I think on top of that, we have some growth and some new positions in there that have not been yet filled, because part of that is also we have difficulty filling positions, and part of it is because we want to time it right. Roger, would you like to expand on that?
Yeah, I'd say it's hard. It's been the hardest to find people in the broadband industry and hire them now compared to what we've ever seen in the past. So it's gotten incredibly competitive. There's a lot of money flying around in the industry as the state and federal government has put a lot of money in grants and other programs. So there's a lot of companies in growth mode. It's definitely put a strain on our ability to hire and retain. We haven't had any sort of like drop in our ability to deliver services and support things, but we've definitely not been able to hire some of the positions we wanted to as quickly as we'd hoped. But I think we're okay. I mean, it's not been a crisis, but it's been a little bit of a strain. We don't want to just throw money out there to get the people we need. A lot of times we've had to grow within, do a lot of training. It's provided opportunities for employees to advance, which has been good. We actually like to nurture that environment here to give people advancement opportunities. But sometimes when we just want to hire, it's been hard to get people.
Okay, thanks Roger and Jason for that. Anybody else? Other questions on the finances? All right, Jason, let's go on to the charts then.
Okay, just quickly, 2 charts that we show every month. Monthly recurring revenue. You'll notice we're still, this is 2022 kind of through here, how we're doing. We're growing significantly with revenue for, this is both, oh wait, hold on, I want this one first. Here's the monthly revenue. As you can see, UIA and Utopia put together, we're still seeing significant bump for 2022. We're bringing on new customers. Sales are still going well. Roger will give you an update on that. Utopia is having some slight growth. That's mainly coming from Idaho Falls right now. We're about to see Bozeman kick in, so they're going to see a little bit more growth come through there. We're just starting to light up areas in Bozeman, so those numbers are going to start kicking off here. Additionally, this is the chart that shows the difference between, for UIA, this is a UIA chart, but it is of interest for Utopia. The blue line is our monthly recurring revenue. The top line here shows the total of all of our bond payments of the bonds that have been issued through UIA. The difference between these two is now $800,000 a month in November, almost. It's not quite, it's within a few, 10 or 15,000, something like that. But we've seen significant growth in revenue coming in UIA, and I think that's a good thing, and sales are going to keep coming in, so that's really good. Any questions on the recurring revenue?
No questions from the board. Thank you very much. And Jason, then with that, we'll move to the next item, which is Roger's network operations update.
Okay, so some good things have been going on. Obviously, we did complete the refund and refinance the Utopia bonds, and so many of you were on those meetings as we had to do a lot of hearings and other things, but that's been a good thing for us, both getting us better structure for our debt while not increasing the obligation from the cities. It did come out far more favorable than we thought, and so we were able to get $8.3 million in savings out of that. We do have a lot of need for that funds, and I'd say there's opportunity to use that money in revenue creating opportunities, which would give us a better long-term position to offset the debt obligations for Utopia. Even with that, we're still seeing more benefit from the UIA revenues. That's, obviously UIA has taken on a lot more debt and built a lot of network and growing revenues more rapidly. Utopia does get revenue from those, and so that's been a big benefit to Utopia. And then to Jason's point on the Idaho Falls type situation, we're continuing to see some pretty good growth there. And those customers, while they're less revenue per customer, we didn't take any debt for those customers, but that's money coming into Utopia. That's the same model for Bozeman, and Bozeman's just had its first areas become complete. So we're starting to see customers come in that similar model, but we'll have that whole city built out quickly, relatively quickly, like over the next couple of years. But Idaho Falls has been a little bit more of an incremental build out. So we're expecting to see a lot of customers, more than at least the pace of growth increasing for those UTOPIA revenues related to Idaho Falls and Bozeman. So it's not going to skyrocket like UIA, but it should be a good solid revenue growth for UTOPIA, which is a good thing. So obviously revenue growth at UTOPIA and at UTOPIA or UIA is, we're hoping to set ourselves up nicely for the future to come on each year and do a larger percentage of the debt payments on the UTOPIA bonds. So that's all good. From a numbers perspective, let me pull up some of our subscriber charts. These do count both UTOPIA and UIA collectively, but it's just kind of nice to see what things look like. I've got some things to update in here still, and we're moving to a new reporting system, so it's maybe the last time we see this format, but we're trying to capture all the different data points so that it doesn't seem like you're getting less information, maybe even more information. But these, we'll send these ones out. We'll get them formatted. Like Layton is off the chart. We got to fix that. It's a good problem to have when a city grows beyond what we have. But we have started to see Syracuse come in. I've got to add their data into the chart as well. But you see Pleasant Grove is starting strong as that growth chart's jumping up. We expect to do very well in Pleasant Grove and Syracuse, and coming in shortly after, we'll be seeing Cedar Hills and Santa Clara come on board. And then Bozeman as well will be coming on here. But the Bozeman, again, is specific to UTOPIA, so that'll be really good. So overall, things have gone really well. Our total subscriber, this chart here lags a little bit. It's kind of hard to see where that's at. It doesn't have the last month on here yet, but we're at about 51,300 to 400 right now. So it was kind of a great thing when we surpassed 50,000, and off we are to well over that and accelerating that growth. We're seeing between 500 and 900 a month. I think the last 2 months were 800 plus subscribers coming on. We had some 500 something months before that of net growth. So things continue to grow, and obviously the thing we like to point out here is, yes, we're seeing very rapid growth in new areas, but you could go to any city in the network and we continue to add customers. So obviously it's a question that comes up, what do we think about the competitive options out there? Are we seeing anything from the cable companies? Are we seeing anything from DSL, fixed wireless, satellite, any of those things coming out that are presenting themselves as a competitive option? And what we're seeing is that we're actually outpacing all of them. We're still fiber. We haven't really changed the fiber other than we offer higher speeds, and fiber has become more and more competitive compared to all other options. So consumer trends definitely are moving away from cable, wireless, and even satellite towards fiber, and we're our position to benefit from that and see higher take rates and subscriber numbers everywhere across the board. And that's what's resulting in those charts with the revenue subscriber numbers just continue to climb. So it does obviously slow down as we get to higher and higher take rates, but these cities where it's flattening out is, they're up in the, I think our highest take rate is something in the 60, well, I'll put it up right here. Let's see, I need to get the last month in there, but so we got 64.6% is our highest in Morgan, so a very good take rates. But we'll get this report polished up and emailed out to you, and I think you guys do enjoy getting the city-specific reports in there too, so those come out of this as well. It's been a couple of months since we sent that out, so we'll get it out this month, so you have a city-specific report you can give, as well as the summary reports for each city. So anyways, it's all good. We closed on the West Haven bonds recently, so we'll be building West Haven. That's the most recent city partnership. And there's conversations going on with several additional cities out there. We've got proposals in with several cities. I don't know where they'll land. but there's definitely a lot of cities looking at this and potentially partnering with us. We're excited for that opportunity. And one other opportunity that's out there, we brought it up before with the board, and it is a UTOPIA partnership, and that would be with the Golden State Connect Authority in California. They've gotten their first funding of about $20 million in grants, and it's not for building networks, it's just for kind of design and feasibility work, and they've got Tilson Engineering doing the lion's share of that work. But they do have us in a consulting role. They want to make sure everything is designed and built to our specs so that if they do get funding for the build out and operation of those networks, that can plug in nicely with what we're doing. We do have a revenue that comes from that agreement, but I think in total we're only talking a couple $100,000, and that's more than enough to cover staff's time to deal with it just on that consulting level. But we're excited that the potential of that network could be as much as $1 billion of build out in various areas of California. They would be doing all the funding of all of that. We would just kind of be a remote operating partner similar to Idaho Falls and Bozeman and get revenue from each customer. So it's one that's they haven't gotten the big money yet, but there's great potential and we're excited for that.
Hey, Roger,
Any questions?
Doug, yeah, I have a
Yep.
question. They're probably dumb questions. I haven't thought these out, but could you just review for us again the total debt service for UTOPIA? I'm talking about the city debt service and how much that is and when that will be paid off.
Yep, I'll pull that up right now.
Now, with that, I'm assuming that didn't change with the refinancing, but
the amounts are a little different because of kind of how it comes out. It didn't increase the exposure to the cities, but based on how things, the timing, I mean, we actually describe it now as $205 million. Before I think it was $185 million, but we're paying less in fees and so while the amount, the par amount of the bonds is more, the actual payments are not more, if that makes sense. So the payment structure, let's see here, here's your debt service schedule. So it ends in 2040. If you remember, that increases every year. And so if you look at your fiscal year totals, last year it was mid 15 million, I think. And then UTOPIA paid, UIA, sorry, let me talk about this year. The current year, we've budgeted 4 million of it coming from UIA. And so the cities would be on the hook for the difference. And then the hope is every year we come back and pay a bigger portion of that. But the collective amount is about 16 million that's 2024. And then that goes up 16 to 17. Maximum payment at the end is 21 million in that year. Hopefully by then we're paying the lion's share of it, if not all of it. So again, we're taking a bigger piece of that each year. This was originally a 33-year refinance back in 2008. So again, the duration hasn't changed. We were about 13 years in and 12 years in or something. So we still have, I guess it's a little more than that. So yeah, it's all done in 2040, one way or the other.
all right. So 205 million is the principal to be paid off in 2040. Okay. Second question is you had mentioned that there was a savings through the refinance of about $8 million. And you said that you'd like to use that money to expand, I guess, the network opportunities out there. So why would
normally whenever there's an order, let me just stretch this a little bit. Normally there's a need, like say we get a big award from UEN or some business, it automatically goes to UIA, and UIA pays for the construction, and UIA gets the revenue. Under this, we can assign some of these needs to UTOPIA to build and connect, and then have UTOPIA benefit from the revenues. Normally, we're doing regular debt issuances at UIA, which is good, and then it has to go pay all of that debt. Well, now we can do that without a debt issuance at UTOPIA, we can create new revenues without incurring new debt obligations.
Yeah,
But
so,
the needs out there, we put it in UIA's bucket or Utopia's bucket. This just gives us an opportunity to put the benefit directly at Utopia.
right, understand that. But isn't and this is where I haven't thought through this question, but what the original cities of Utopia are paying the interest and the debt on that original money. And then somebody else is benefiting from it. And I know there's an indirect benefit that's supposed to come back to the cities, to Utopia, but wouldn't it make more sense for the cities to be able to, that are benefiting, to use it, to benefit from those savings by putting it towards the debt, or putting it somehow towards something that benefits more the cities that are having to pay the interest than letting somebody else benefit off of that money that we're paying the interest on?
Yeah, I don't see anybody else benefiting from it financially, right? The question is whether we put the 8.3 million directly just as a one-time payment back to the cities, or whether we create $20 to $40 million, but spread out over time by investing that money and creating recurring revenues from it.
Actually, Roger, you can't do a one-time payment to the cities. It would have been, you would have had to decrease the amount paid on the bonds.
Okay, well, our hands are tied anyways, I guess.
Yeah, sorry.
But it's good for all to have. If we were to pick one or the other, I would argue, because we already know and regularly have the opportunities to build network and create revenues from it, knowing that opportunity is out there to use the money for that purpose, there's a lot more benefit and debt relief that we can provide to the cities over time versus just here's a one-time thing. I mean, it's similar to the argument we made, or the discussion and decision back with the RUS settlement. We got $11 million out of the RUS settlement, and we were able to go and use that money. I think that's what we used to build Perry City and other projects, and we were able to create revenues. So where Utopia's revenues had been declining, we actually were able to turn that around and increase the revenues at Utopia, and no longer have an operating deficit or other things. We used to have to go back to the cities and ask for them to make up the operating deficits. We've been able to get away from that because we use the money in a way that generated revenues.
Yeah, but I would argue that RUS is different than this particular case because there's no interest associated with the RUS settlement. So I'm okay with expanding opportunities and having that revenue come back, as long as somebody's paying that interest that we're having to pay. So if you're going into a new city and they're having to, as I understand it, in the past, they've typically covered their own debt and interest. But if we're now saying we've got $8 million that we're just going to give without any kind of an interest to reimburse those of us that had the original investment, I might have an issue with that, because I think they need to pay the interest that we are paying on that debt.
Yeah, I think the use of the money to create revenues would cover principal plus interest plus a whole lot more. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't use the money for that purpose. We don't have any something tied to using this money. I would say we'd use it in very opportunistic ways to maximize the revenue versus just going in and saying, hey, let's build, a citywide network because it's the right thing to do. Now, there could be an argument made if a city comes in and guarantees revenue off of a project, would we go and finance that project, or just say, hey, maybe we finance it if the business modeling around that project were incredibly favorable? If it was more of a break-even scenario, then I'd say no way, right? We've got better uses of that money that would maximize the debt relief for the cities.
Okay, well, I think you and I are on the same page.
Yeah, if I could add a comment to that, Doug's question's very salient and a good one. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, Doug, like you said, we are all on the same page. I've got the same questions, and I ask Roger, as we consider any sorts of these opportunities that go forward, the same sorts of questions. the way I try to do it is, okay, Roger, tell me from an investment and a debt servicing and an agreement standpoint, all leading up to whatever the net number is. Yeah, how does that affect us at the city level? And are we on a net basis better or not as good as we make those sorts of investment decisions? So yeah, totally with you, Doug, on that for sure.
Well, the comment that I deal with all the time in Murray with our elected officials is we would have been better off waiting and joining later because we don't have to make the debt service that all these other cities are having to make, right? I'm sure you guys deal with that too. And you know, I keep trying to explain to them, yes, but it's not a message that reverberates very well when you're making a huge debt service. Now, fortunately, we're not having to make that debt service right now because it's we're covering those costs, but it's an issue that I continually have to face.
Right. Yeah, maybe what we need to do is get together with you and others that might face the same sort of thing, Doug, and give a little better primer on how do you address that? Because at the end of the day, all of these entities are coming on are, facing that same debt service. It's just a different debt service. It's their own debt service of their own project. And I don't know. It's a complicated question because every single one of the projects ends up being slightly different, but it's a point well taken. Anybody else with network questions? Well, here we are with 2 minutes to go, and we're to the end of the.
Provide one more.
Why
do one more update?
I have like this lag, 30-second lag or something, Roger.
All right. Just one other point I want to bring up. It's not related to the network itself, but more the organization. There was recent meetings with the Fiber Broadband Association meeting where they had open positions for the board. We did nominate our own Kim McKinley to be on the board. And this is the largest fiber industry group in the country. It's a pretty big deal with a lot of big companies and heavy hitters, and we were able to get Kim elected. I'd say we were able to, but she largely did the heavy lifting of campaigning, I guess it is. But anyway, she won a position on the Fiber Broadband Association board, and we're really excited. That puts UTOPIA really among the largest players in the country in their influence with that organization. There's only 9 positions there. We're by far the smallest. You have major telecom providers represented there. And so for us to win a spot there, a lot of kudos to her getting that position, but also excited to have UTOPIA Fiber represented there is a pretty big deal nationally for us. So just want to provide that update.
That's very good. Yeah, congratulations to us and to Kim. Thank you. Also,
thank you, Roger. You never have to bring that up again, by the way. Never have to bring it up again.
Kudos for sure, Kim, and we probably will. I did also want to take a moment too. I noticed Todd had sent an email earlier saying he was no longer going to be with us on the board, and at the same time, we'd like to welcome Mr. Barnhill on as Perry's representative. I wanted to thank Todd for all his years of work and contribution as board. It has been many. He's been around for a long, long time. Left and then come back again, and maybe we'll see him do that again as well. But thanks to you, Todd, for everything you've done for the organization over the years. Did you want to make any comments?
No, that's great. I appreciate it, Wayne and Roger and others. That it's been a long road, and it was fun to see RUS. Not fun to see, but Doug mentioned RUS, or somebody did, that we actually come out on the bright side of that, because that was some dark, tough times for UTOPIA. But Perry definitely appreciated that when they put the RUS money to work to get Perry built out as one of the last cities. So we've been great to see the broadband in our area. It's been awesome.
Hey, I also want to add one more note of gratitude, not just to Todd, but also to Perry as well. Perry, as Todd mentioned, was one of the last cities built. They were very patient, very supportive, and very much part of the team in getting that done. And kudos to the city. And thanks again, Todd. It's been great having you on.
Yeah, best of luck, everybody.
All righty then. As we come to the end there, we have one item left. Item number 9 for adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Tom Peterson.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Jeff Lamson will second.
All right, very good. Appreciate that. All in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
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 All right, and without objection, we'll end the meeting. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll see you next year.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.